And hello, and welcome to Paranormal 101 here at Metaphysical Communion. It is Friday night, December 4th. We're here at 8:30 p.m. getting started for our show this evening. And as you hear from the title, it's going to be about paranormal investigations, what one does, in a paranormal investigation. So I'm going to be talking a bit about, protocols and steps that we follow when we do investigations. This is a subject that a lot of people are finding more and more fascinating all the time. And it's good to teach people a bit how to properly do an investigation. And it's essential because we don't want to run into problems, whether it's from the earth plane as well as to the spiritual. So it's about protecting yourself on all areas, also protecting spirit, too, and how to do things safely, properly, and just to have fun, also. And hopefully you'll get some evidence, some information along the way. But always remember, the first thing to do is to have an open mind, but be respectful, of spirit and those around you on earth as in heaven. And once you do that, it's actually very simple. You can go along and do a variety of investigations in a number of different areas, different places, and do it safely. And you can do them on your own. You can do them with a small group or with a larger group. I've been fortunate that in the last 15 years or so of doing investigations, I've been able to do a variety of different kinds of investigations. For those of you who have seen the program before, you know that I've talked about this before, from the various investigations that I've done, either with groups or on my own, and trying to collect evidence, trying to get a sense of things in different areas, different environments, whether here in New York City or in the tri-state area, or also, traveling, to different, areas of the United States and even other countries. I've always tried to do something along the spiritual line there, and exploring and investigating, different places and different things. So actually, I also have a PowerPoint presentation which I prepared, and I had tried to present, on Halloween or so, but unfortunately, because I tried to do it in Facebook Live, the sharing screen did not work then. However, that's why I decided to do this here in Zoom, because here I have the capabilities to do share screen and things actually work. So that way you can actually see what I'm talking about. And I can describe to you, and you can actually see some of the interesting places, some of the things I've captured, on camera and photos, fascinating places I've been to also. Some are very well known, and we've seen them, on Travel Channel, for instance, and some of the various investigations that they've done on their programs there, also. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to some of these places and go see them for myself and go investigating on my own. So I have some of those, there to, show you later on this evening. And I'm just waiting to see if we get more of an audience coming here with us tonight. And let me just look and see if there's anything out there. Hold on a second. Well, I focused in a bit on seeing who else is here. Let's see. Okay. All right, very good. And let's see. Okay. So we'll just check and see. We'll wait for a little bit more of an audience to develop. If not, we'll just go ahead and anyway undo it on our own. This is being recorded, so that way I can place this later on Facebook. So that way people who missed this, are able to see it then. So we'll be here for an hour or so, talking about, paranormal investigations, paranormal activity, things that happen, things that don't happen, and do a little bit of demystifying from what's real in an investigation as opposed to what is not, also. So we'll begin by describing steps that are important to take when you're going to conduct a paranormal investigation. So first and foremost, the thing to do, and this can come from a variety of ways. So if you plan to do this on your own and there's a particular place that you find of interest that you've heard that is haunted, and you want to go exploring that on your own or with a group of people, it's best to do a little research first. Even though you may think you know about the place and know what's happened there in its past or so, it's always good to do research on your own first. Because sometimes the programs are not going to tell you everything. And it's best to find out a little bit background, on your own. And usually there's a lot more happening there than what you realize or what you've seen or learned from watching on television. So it's always good to do your own research first and foremost. Take the time to go into the search engines, do a search for the particular place. Read up on it, read about its history, read about who was there, read about what happened exactly, and find out more. That'll give you a nice foundation, to go on. So that way, when you get there, you'll know where to look better. You know what to search for exactly. Another thing you need to do also is to be well prepared, for this. So either on your own or in a group, there's certain things that you need to have with you. Also, in order to do a proper investigation, you want to be, comfortable. You want to make sure you have what you need. It doesn't really take a lot of things. Again, seeing from television or so, you see they have all this incredible equipment with them, and they can spend up to a week, in a particular environment. Well, they can do that. They have the budget. Number one, they have the time to do that as well. They are there for that purpose, and they're not alone. There's a lot of other people surrounding them, also being of help. But even they, if you've noticed, have done their research as well. So they go prepared. So that's number one, prepared to see what you might expect and prepared for the unexpected, also. So secondly, depending on the particular site that you're going to, is if you need to ask permission, because there are certain places that you may need, you just can't present yourself, say, oh, hi, I'm here to see this and whatever, and I want to do an investigation. And a lot of times that's not really the way that it is. You have to, ask, if you can conduct an investigation at whatever site, whether it's a museum or some sort of old house or whatever that can be utilized as a museum, or some place that, that a lot of people don't go to especially, and it could be even cordoned off, to the public, but yet you find it fascinating and interesting enough to want to, take the time to go there. You need to really, find out, first of all, you just can't present yourself somewhere and assume that you're just going to go in there and do as you please. So it's always best to check to see if you need to find out, who is in charge of the place, for instance, if you need permission to be able to bring your equipment so you can do an investigation. So it's always, it's just courtesy and good manners to, to ask first, to call ahead and see. And a lot of times people can be very agreeable to that, or they may just decline, saying that we're not really, wanting to have that happening here for whatever reasons. They don't want a rash of investigators coming, for instance, and taking over the place to do this on a regular basis. They also, especially if it's a place that's, historic, they have to preserve and protect, the site, also. So you have to, be mindful and be respectful, and always, ask first. If it's a place that is abandoned, for instance, you have to check to see, first of all, and usually by doing an internet, search, you can find out, that a certain place that, the public doesn't have access to, it's abandoned or far out or whatever, may be protected, may be gated off even. And they may not allow trespassers, there at all. It may seem that way on the television when you go first or whatever, but then when you try to do it on your own, it's a different story. And there are, guards, there are protections there. The place can even be gated, which you don't really see, on TV. So never assume. It's always best to find out first If there is a contact, for this type of place that you can reach out to, I advise that you do that as well. And see if, tell them what your purpose is and the reason why you wish to visit the site. And then if they say, yes or so, but, that's fine. If you have to be accompanied by someone, excellent. At least you can get in. But if they say, absolutely not, we forbid, the public from entering the space, then you must abide, by that. And you don't certainly want to break laws or get yourself into big trouble, with the law as well. So it's always best to, just find out first and do stay away. Don't think and assume, because sometimes you can see in certain sites that people have said, oh yeah, there was a gate or so, it was protected, but I just jumped the gate or went ahead anyway. Sometimes they're lucky, sometimes they're not. People have gotten into problems, because of that. So you want to try to avoid that as much as possible. I myself in the past, before I became a little bit more experienced in this, I would go to certain places sometimes to have a look. I didn't really research at the beginning. Then later on, I learned a little bit, look ahead and see. And then I could see, well, you should call ahead or you should go in, but, be mindful, be careful, because there are guards or there's a police, going around the place. You just be prepared for that. They ask you to leave, you must leave. So, luckily I never ran into trouble in that way, fortunately. But I did go to a few places and found out that there was no trespassing signs, or there was a camera or cameras around, or the access was just not there. So, I wasn't going to push, my luck into doing that and, and pursue that. An example, for instance, a few months ago, just around over the summer, I had learned about a site, an abandoned site called the Jumping Jack, Jumping Jack Pump House, located in Brooklyn. Now, this was a new site that I'd never known about before. It just happened to find it accidentally from doing research into places that are haunted, etc. And this place, was just mentioned a few times there. So there were some pictures as well. I found it extremely fascinating, very large, vast place, but really in a great big state of decay. It's been there, God knows how many decades or whatever. And it's abandoned pretty much. But yet some people did manage to get in there and take incredible pictures and try to, I guess, search for something or whatever. They were kind of lucky, obviously, but they also said that it's very dangerous to go there. So be very, very careful if you can get in. So, one day, over the summer, I decided, well, let me just go and see and have a look at this place and find it. I was lucky enough to be able to find the address because it's a big secret. A lot of people were talking about it, but they didn't want to give away the exact location. They were trying to protect, the place. They didn't want it to become overrun with a barrage of people for whatever reasons or so. Again, it's not a safe place to go. And it's in a big state of decay. So you could get seriously injured if you touch the wrong thing, or you make a misstep or whatever. You don't want to run into that problem, especially if you're on your own. So I just went around to have a look and see. And I did find, the space somehow, but it certainly isn't the way that they had described to a great degree, over the internet. For instance, since I guess writing from those websites that I saw, things have, changed since then. And I noticed that a lot of the place was cordoned off. They were doing construction, in parts of the area there. And pretty much they had like a turnstile, I guess, for workers to go in, construction workers, because a building next door to this, spot was being renovated and really being built up, brand new. They just left the skeleton of the former space that it was, and they were going to, build some sort of new, kind of building there and utilizing the skeleton of the original, space. So there was construction happening there. I went on a weekend, so there was no one there. But nevertheless, you could see that it was a construction site. So at that point, let me just admit Valerie here. And let's see. Hello, Valerie. How are you? Thank you for joining, me this evening here. So as I was saying, so I went into the space here and noticed that it was just protected. It was off limits, basically. And there were signs, off limits construction area, and there were cameras. So when I saw that, I said, well, that's it. Obviously this has changed since, where I read from before, and there's no longer access at all to the site. But I got to see it for a bit of a distance, got to learn a little bit about that area of Brooklyn. I'd never been there before. So, I got to learn a few things. There's a wonderful park, by the river there, also, which I never even heard about. So I discovered that, there. So, at least I explored the place, saw what it was about a bit. Saw a whole new area of Brooklyn I'd never been to. And, took it for that. And that was it. So it's a learning experience. So again, but be respectful, be mindful, when you're going to do an investigation, because again, you do not want to run into trouble or problems at all. The last thing you want to do is to get hurt in an environment as well. If it looks unsafe and it's just too much, then please, just stay away. Heed the warnings, see what's there. Don't let your ego or your desire to explore because it's exciting, whatever, get the best of you. You could pay for it in a very bad way later on. There's no need for that. There's lots of places you can go to safely that you can explore and are very fascinating and are historic, and you can do investigations. And there are even places right here in New York City where they even do the investigation, so you can go and attend, with trained professionals, and they'll guide you through. And if you want to do, bring some of your own equipment along the way, you can also do that. Call ahead, as I said earlier. Tell them what your reason for going there, what your purpose is, and just they'll tell you, please, go ahead, bring your equipment, we'll work with you, or we don't allow that. We just are here just to investigate and to explore. So you're welcome to join our investigation or a tour of the site and do that. You'll always be able to bring a camera, a video camera, or a recording device. And they will, most places, not all, will allow you, to do that, during the course of the time that you're there. So you can do an investigation in that way. Just work with the people, of the place, of the site. And you never know what you might capture. A lot of people have sometimes captured a lot of wonderful things there. And let's see, Valerie. Hello, Valerie. You have no volume? Okay. Well, I have volume here, and I'm using in my thing here. So let me have a look and see. My audio is on. It should be working right. And let me adjust it a little bit more to see. Let me know if you can hear me now, because I know that my video certainly is working and my audio, is working, as well. So at this point, let me see. Let me just double check to make sure. No, my audio is working just fine. And hold on a second. Let's see. And no, my audio is working just fine from here. I just hope it's working because I'm recording this. I hope it's really, doing what it's supposed to be doing. But so far it looks like it's working ahead. And let me see. Here you are. Well, hello, there you are. Can you hear me still? Just write me on the chat and let me know, because I have the chat, working here. And let me see, hold on a second. Okay. And I've got myself here. And let me just change that view for a bit, just to make sure. And let's just do that. I'm gonna try to, there we go. Okay, good. So I'm back here on full screen. So let's come up with the chat here and let me know if you can hear me now, because my audio is indicating to me that it's working. So it should be fine. Let me just write to you just in case. Quickly, and we'll continue here. Okay, so I wrote back and let's see. So, all right, my audio is working just fine. Everything's working fine here. So let me know. So in the meantime, so that is very important advice to follow when you're doing investigation. Number one, of course, it is to, do your research. Number two, respect the places that you're going to. Again, people will work with you if you ask. There's no harm in asking ever. Further preparations that you require is your equipment. So it's always advisable to take, a camera. Obviously, you want to take pictures. That I don't even have to tell you that as well. If you're interested in recording audio, do take a recording device of some kind with you. If you're taking a movie camera, that will be part of your audio as well. Or you can take a separate recorder. Also, investigators usually do that. We have our, to capture EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. We have our own, pocket recorders, with us. And I have pictures to show you in a bit, about that as well as we share the screen. So let's see, let me admit another person here as well. Let's see. So at this point, here we have, let me see. Okay, good. So connecting to audio. Let's see if Valerie can connect to audio now. Okay, very good. And so again, it's always, be prepared with your equipment, usually your audio, video, a camera is good, a regular camera as well. Also, your audio device is also good, too, for that as well. So bring, if you have a small recording device, it's very helpful. And you can leave it anywhere, in one space, you can continue elsewhere, taking pictures or investigating another place. It's always best actually to leave your devices, whether it's a video recorder or an audio recorder, in the space by itself. And as you go off to other areas of the environment, you have to continue investigating, because sometimes when you come back, you may capture very fascinating evidence that normally you may not catch if you are present in the space. A lot of times, spirit does not like to really present itself when they know that somebody's there actively seeking them out. But if you leave the space or so, they may be more willing to connect or to communicate, on some level. So think of it that way too. Other things that you would need to take for your investigations, depending, of course, is to wear comfortable clothing. Very important. This is not a glamour-zone, experience. A lot of people want to get dressed up and look all gorgeous and for what? This is not television. The ghosts don't care what you look like or how beautifully presented you are. You can go just wearing your own regular clothes. It's always advisable to wear comfortable clothes. A pair of jeans is fine, any kind of regular shirt or so. Minimal jewelry is advisable. In fact, no jewelry is preferable, because sometimes the metallics there can be of an interference with certain things, even with your equipment, or so, depending on the type of equipment that you have. You don't want things that can make noise, either. When you are conducting an investigation, you want everything to be as quiet, as silent as possible, so that way you can capture evidence. If you start talking, if you start whispering even, your recorders, audio, even video or so, but especially audio devices will capture any little bit of noise. So when you are conducting an investigation, silence is everything. If you need to communicate with someone that's with you or in the environment, it's best to speak in a regular tone of voice. Don't go whispering or lowering your voice, because that way can contaminate your evidence. You want to be able to distinguish between what is you and the people around you as to what might actually be true evidence that's captured on your audio device. So a lot of professional investigators follow those protocols, as well. So wear, comfortable shoes, your sneakers, shoes that are soft, no heels, no, hard, platform shoes or whatever. Again, walking around certain sites, they will make noise. It can interfere with audio evidence. So you want to try to be as light-footed as possible. You want to wear comfortable shoes, like sneakers or so, whatever, but no flip-flops, no heavy boots, no shoes, like I said, with heels or whatever. You want soft surfaces on your shoes, on the platforms of your shoes. Again, silence is everything, as well as comfort. You may be standing around for quite a while. You may be, climbing certain places. Some places are a bit precarious even, depending where you're going. So you want to make sure that you have firm footing, as well as quiet, footing. All of that counts. So again, it's just to be, you know, minimalist is the best for these things. You're there to do an investigation. If you're serious about it, you know, you want to try to capture evidence. You want to try to establish some sort of a connection with spirit, with ghosts, with whatever that may be there. So doing the best that you can, you know, to make that, you know, the best outcome that can come out of it eventually is key. Do take with you as well, especially with the colder climates or so, you know, clothes, you know, sweaters, you know, down jackets, you know, or woolen jackets, things that are going to keep you warm. You know, also a lot of times investigations are in places that don't have heat. They're either be abandoned or they're very, very old. They don't have electricity really running through them. So you may get very cold, especially in the evening hours. So you want to be warm. You want to wear your gloves. You want to wear, you know, layers, also a scarf, you know, your jacket, a coat. Again, comfortable and warm shoes, so heavy socks. You want to be dry, you know, also. You want to try to be comfortable so that you're not distracted, you know, from anything, you know, at all. You want to keep your focus on the investigation and what you're doing. So those are things that can be very helpful, you know, to you as well. So if you're doing an outdoor investigation, say if you're exploring a cemetery, you know, at night, even in warmer weather, depending, you know, you want to have at least a heavy sweater or a good sweater, just in case the temperature drops, you know, also. You don't want to be cold or, you know, making yourself susceptible to illness, especially now with the COVID virus. There aren't that many investigations happening outdoors anyway, but still, you want to be as comfortable as possible, have what you need. In addition, in regards to your equipment, you want to make sure that things are working. So prior to going on an investigation, you need to check your equipment. Make sure that things are charged. Make sure that things are up and running and ready. You don't want to run into a problem later on when you get to your investigation site. If you're using battery operated equipment, you need to always put in fresh batteries for each investigation. And you want to carry spares as well when you go on investigation also. At times, if you go to a certain site, you think you've checked it out at home just before you go. When you get to the site, suddenly things don't really work as they did, you know, before. Your batteries are not functioning for some reason or so. You want to make sure that you have fresh batteries to replace just in case. One thing about paranormal investigations when it comes to spirit, ghosts, etc., entities, whatever, there is a well-established fact that these ghosts, spirits, entities, whatever that may be there, whatever, tend to draw energy from equipment, from electrical equipment. So at times your equipment is working beautifully, you get to the place or so, it starts to work and then just fizzes out for no reason whatsoever. There's no explanation. This happens numerous times. You've seen them on the television shows, you know, as well, that from time to time their equipment suddenly fails, you know, them without explanation. And they have to take the time then to reset things or to recharge things once again, put in new batteries and hope that things start to work, because sometimes spirit, ghosts, in order to manifest, or they even being in the environment, tend to draw energy. They take the energy out of things. They can take the energy out of the people that are there, because they need that energy in order to manifest themselves in an environment, or they can take it out of the equipment. It's electricity. Anything that has to do with electrical, they will utilize to draw, so they can gain energy to strengthen themselves, so they can be in the environment and do what they do there. And then that's why you see that sometimes equipment can fail. That's also the reason why sometimes people start to feel strange or different or uncomfortable inside. They feel that they're getting a headache. They feel that they're nauseous. They feel they're drained of energy for no explainable reason. They were feeling fine prior to going to the site. When they get there, these things start to happen to them. They start experiencing, you know, ill feelings or so. And at times it can be explained once again that the energies that are present at the site can drain, you know, individuals. So that way they can, you know, manifest themselves there and draw so they can gain energy, to continue being in the site, or just being there, or whatever they do, there, where they're trying to connect with you, whether they're trying to even frighten you or whatever, or so, they can be drawing energy, from you. So be prepared for that too. So going along with that, the things for that, if you encounter such experiences, again, from the equipment side of things, is to have, your batteries, for instance. If you have bigger electrical equipment or so, try to have a portable electrical recharger, with you. So that way you can recharge your equipment if needed. Not all sites, have electrical connections. As I said a moment ago, some of these places can be very old, they have nothing there. They're abandoned, so there's nothing working there. So you need to be able to recharge your equipment on your own. So portable batteries, portable electrical, rechargers are essential when you're doing those types of investigations, as well. You need to recharge your equipment. If you have more than 1 or 2 or 3 cameras as well, even so much the better. More than 1 recorder, so much the better. One fails, you can utilize the other one. Don't go with just one thing alone. That works very well in groups. Groups of people tend to have equipment of their own, so they bring it all together. But if you're on your own, try to have a backup system. Very important. You don't want to go to a place and then end up not being able to collect evidence. Very disappointing. So it's about preparation and being well. Take, something, or take water with you, bottles of water to replenish yourself. Sometimes you're in a site for a number of hours or so, so you want to be able to have some energy source. Take also snacks with you as well. Usually healthy snacks are good. Nutrition bars, for instance, things that, that are healthy, that are small to carry, also, and that are nutritious, to give you some energy. Should you need that for whatever reason, because you've been there too long, or because you experienced, like I just explained, a drop in your energy or so, whatever, you want to replenish your system. So that way you can have the strength to continue and be especially a bright of mind and clear and sharp and focused. Because conducting investigations, you have to be very clear. You have to pay a lot of attention to all details. You have to keep your eyes and your ears open and your senses open. You want to be present, at that site, and be able to see and absorb as much as you can, while there. Take a writing pad and, of course, a pen or pencil, with you, also. You may want to jot down, things that you may suddenly, see or hear, or that occur to you, also, or there's something fascinating that comes on that you need to take some history. And sometimes, as I said, recording devices may fail you, but at least if you can write it on a pad, you have a history of those events. When you do things such as recordings, audio, video, always announce, the date, your name, the time, and the site that you are investigating. That'll give you accountability for that particular site. And when you end recording, just say that, end, recording for this period, at this time as well. That can help with proof, later on. So those announcements are very important at the beginning and then in conclusion as well. If you're investigating a site with a group of people, a team of people, especially if it's a larger site, try to get some sort of talking, devices as well. What they used to call walkie-talkies. I don't know if they still use that phrase anymore or so, but try to get, some of those as well, because you'd like to try to stay in communication with the other members of your team that are investigating the space. You've seen that on television, that they do have those devices, as well. So for larger sites, especially those that you're going to be staying there for hours or so, it's always good to have those types of devices as well, so you communicate with one another. So should something fascinating happen, all of a sudden you can let the other ones know. God forbid, should you run into trouble or a problem, you don't feel well or something's happened, you can call for assistance. And that way somebody will always know where you are, and they can come to you, and vice versa. You can go to them, also. And you're constantly, in communication of where you are, of where you're aware of and what's going on, what's happening. Always good to have those devices as well. So those are some of the essentials that you need, in order to do, investigations, whether they're from you're a beginner or more intermediate or so, until you reach the level of professional or so. All those things are backbone things that you use, for your investigations. Now I'm going to try here, just make a share screen and show you my presentation that I had prepared. Let's see if that comes up here. Very good. So hopefully you are all seeing this. So this is a presentation that I prepared for this evening, to go along with what I am discussing, for you tonight. I'm glad this is working. So I've entitled this, Phantoms of the Night, and this was originally from my October Metaphysical Communion. The first one I did for the second season. I was going to present this, but as I said, there were some problems there, with Facebook Live, but we don't have that here. So this was from the original presentation, so I entitled it that way. So if you can see this clearly enough, that's our opening page. So from here, we'll move on to our secondary page. So here's some of the equipment that we utilize. Now, for those of you who are seasoned viewers of some of the various paranormal shows out there, you know these equipments already. And for those of you who are newer or not too clear on them, we have a little bit of a description for you here. So these are, items that we use regularly when we conduct investigations. And there's newer equipment coming out all the time. The field has changed a lot just in the last 10 years alone. I mean, when I started, seeing paranormal shows, which at this point should be like about, I say about 10 years at this point, because I didn't get cable TV till about 2010, 2011. It was 2011 or so. So prior to that, I was just hearing a lot about these shows, but I wasn't seeing them because network TV were not presenting, those programs. But I had heard about them from my friends, who do investigations, and others about them, what they do, what they did not, etc., about equipment. When I started doing investigations, it was in 2005. So I was new, to this area of equipment. So thanks to the team that I worked with, Paranormal Investigation NYC, I learned a lot about the scientific side, the research side of investigations. And I learned a lot as well, about equipment that is utilized, for these investigations. So I must thank them there, especially the founder of Paranormal Investigation NYC, Don Villela, who created the team in 2003, along with some of the other people there, Tony Steele and Joe, there also. And then later on, the other people that came on board, Gilberto, Amara as well. And let me see, who else can I think of? We had a number of people join us, for the team as it expanded a bit. They were the ones who pretty much introduced me first and foremost to the equipment that is utilized, there. And very grateful because I've learned a lot, since then. So as you can see here in the slide, we have what we call our REM pod, which is a proximity detector, also known as EMF, which stands for electronic magnetic field detector. They don't put the D in it, but they do the EMF, electromagnetic field. So that's just one of the equipments that are utilized, for that. Again, spirit works through electricity. It runs through vibrations. It runs through electrical currents. So that is why these types of equipment are utilized. Electricity is what draws them. Electricity is what can provide them to communicate, to connect with us here on this plane of existence. For REM pod, for instance, you place it, anywhere on the floor, on a table or so, and it has an antenna which collects the electrical impulses, and then you see that there are lights, there. So when the lights flash, it's an indicator that there could be something there in the environment. Now, that could also indicate that maybe there's electrical wiring that it's picking up on, or something, in the room or in the space somehow, even from the ground, even from above, that it could be connecting somehow that could set that off also. Some other anomaly that may happen in the area, something that may pass by for some reason that might suddenly make that sound off, or the lights start to flash. But a lot of times, when there's nothing around it, it starts to light and flash or whatever, that could indicate that there might be something paranormal there. It doesn't prove that it is, but it could indicate. Once we check off all the other things, in the environment, we try to do that. We try to investigate to see, could this be electrical wiring that we don't see? It could be behind the wall. It could be something there, something close by in the environment or so, something from the, let's say the ground floor, from below, depending on where you are, that could be causing this. We try to weed out, those things. And once we see that, that it is something like that, we find out whatever, then we could, just place it to that. Well, that's because it picked up on that or so. But if there doesn't seem to be anything like that in an environment, then we can begin to be open to the fact that maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something paranormal after all. So, but we never can prove it until we get actual hardcore evidence, which is the most incredible thing to do. Along with that, we have the FLIR, the thermal imaging camera. You've seen that as well for those of you who see the programs, that they utilize that. It provides the heat signature. This one, shows you right here. Let me see if I can increase that screen if it's possible. Let me see so you get a closer look of it. I may not have the capability here to do that, unfortunately, but hopefully you're getting a clear enough shot of it, from here. So yeah, so hopefully you'll get a good view of it from here. And that, is an equipment. This is a handheld, FLIR device. There are others that attach, to computer systems that are utilized for a larger screen. And those are usually for bigger investigations that they utilize that type of thing. This one, you can walk around the environment and it has the screen that shows you the heat signature. And it'll, usually capture the heat signature of things that are alive or that are at the site. So that's where you see, like, usually the color yellow or orange or so means that there's a heat signature. That can be from a person, from an animal, from a living thing or so, something that be generating some sort of heat in the environment. So it'll pick up on that and it'll show that, there. So you can go to a place or so, you can go outdoors even. There's nothing there, but then you can pick up a heat signature of some kind from a distance. A lot of times it's an animal, but if there's no animal environment, then it could indicate, there could be something interesting happening there that's generating some heat in some way, and we can't see it with the naked eye. So it's utilized for that. Here we have, of course, our EMF detector, and this is, our, good old trusty EMF detector that we're utilizing from the beginning of investigations. And it has, similar to the REM pod, the lights. So, if there's something in the environment that is showing us some sort of electrical impulse or whatever, it'll start to flash. People, as you've seen in the shows as well, or in investigations, they may try to talk to spirit or so, and then things may start to flash, from there. And if you're communicating with the spirit, let's say, and you're getting flashes as a response, looks like it's a good indicator that there's something there, that something is trying to connect with you and communicate with you. So we have those there. The next slide shows you the variety of equipment that are utilized for an investigation. As you see, we've talked about our thermal scanners here. There's our FLIR, there. Here's a digital recorder, so as I spoke to you earlier about. So here's where you can get EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, captured. So you can utilize that and, as you can hold it and carry it around, or you could just leave it in the space and go off and let it continue to record on its own. Then check it later on to see if you captured something, you captured a voice, a word, a sound that was out of the ordinary. That, has no explanation because there was nothing around to make any other noise in the environment. And hopefully it'll be clear enough where you can actually make out what it's saying. A lot of times it just comes out as sound or noise. And a lot of times, as you've seen, people with the spirit boxes or so, they have to try to decipher, what that was talking, what those words, could mean. But every once in a while, you might get a clear message or a clear word with no further explanation because nobody else was there or whatever. Strong indicator that that could be a spirit connection for you. Here we have the ghost box. This is a more modern ghost box. There are different types of them. People build their own ghost boxes the old-fashioned way. And now we have, this type. Sometimes a radio is used and you cut the cable and you have a static noise and you can utilize that, as they say, to connect with spirit. So you can ask questions, in the environment, and sometimes, these strange noises come through, and sometimes you could even maybe, a lot of people say that they hear something. They hear some sort of communication answering back in some way. Usually it's with a lot of noise. Sometimes if you're lucky, you may get something clear or so. A lot of times it's just a lot of static with a lot of noise. I don't put too much faith into ghost box really, because a lot of it I think is just the person's very subjective. The person's just putting in what they think, they're hearing, and not necessarily what's actually happening there, with that recording or so. So that I'm very skeptical, about. We have our camera, as you can see here as well. So that is essential for an investigation. This is a digital camera which is utilized. You can get a lot of pictures out of it. When you take pictures, you go around, you take lots and lots of pictures of just one space or so. You don't want to take just 1 or 2 pictures of something, because you never know. Sometimes spirit isn't just there, just to like present itself at the moment. Sometimes you don't even see it, with your eye, but you take a lot of pictures, one after the other. And then when you look back as you're examining or analyzing your evidence, you may have captured something there that you didn't see, with your regular vision. And a lot of times that could indicate that there's something more. It could be dust that might appear, something that anomalies that come from the camera, electrical. But then sometimes it could be indicative of something more, something else, perhaps something spiritual as well. A lot of analyzing, a lot of research is done. So you can utilize a digital camera. They always advise, and this goes back to like Hans Holzer, who is known as the father of the paranormal, where just using a good old Polaroid camera is the best. And even his daughter, Alexandra, when she does investigations, she likes to use a Polaroid camera. She learned that from father, and she still carries that tradition because it's one of the best ways. You get an instant picture at the moment. There's no, nothing that you could tamper with, or you can't be accused of, oh, well, you enhanced it or you tampered with it or so. You take your picture and it comes right out, an instant camera. And you can see your evidence immediately and see if you captured anything there. So a good Polaroid camera is advisable to take. I'm going to see if I can find one myself, and get one of those. And I'd like to use one of those. I haven't used them in years. I used them a long, long time ago. I go back a long way. I'm a lot older than I look. I'm only saying that, but it's true. So I go back to when Polaroid cameras were the thing. And we use those a lot. And they were a lot of fun. And it's true. You get good evidence there that people cannot accuse you of tampering with or falsifying. And you want to have, good evidence where you know that it's real and it's true, and where you cannot be accused, of saying, well, you fixed that or you enhanced it or whatever. And that's not the case there. With digital cameras, there's a little more leeway there or so, but still, they're also, good too. You get a lot of pictures quickly. We have our video cameras. You can see here, that's another essential. You want to capture live video as you're going along, in your investigation. So then you can look back and analyze and see if you captured anything. Similar to a regular photographic camera, sometimes you don't always see things, in the space or hear things. But when you have a video camera with audio especially, and you look back, you may be surprised. You may have captured or something appears there, or you can hear something there that you didn't at that moment. So it's essential. We have our EMF detector we talked about already. We have our torch as well, or our flashlight. You want to have that too. Some places are very dark. You want to make sure where you're going, and you want to make sure that, you don't have any accidents. Avoid accidents and problems, especially at night. You want to have a light source always, at all times. Sometimes so dark there, you may need it in order to get into the place so you can take proper pictures and cameras. It may help you even capture some evidence, also. And when you have a flashlight, another essential that you may need as well is to have like a lens, placed on it. You don't want just a basic, flashlight, because it doesn't really work. You want to have like either a red lens or a green lens that you can place on, that thing. So on that torch, as they call it here. So that way, it doesn't contaminate evidence, when you're capturing things with your audio video devices. And we have our two-way radios. And that's why I was calling walkie-talkie earlier. Your radios are essential also, especially if you have bigger investigations with more than 2 or 3 people. You want to have a way to always establish, communication and a connection. These things are not as expensive as they used to be. Other things, can be. For instance, your FLIR, for instance, those things can run into the hundreds even. You have bigger equipment with computer screens or whatever, that's going to cost you as well. You see that on television also. They have the budget for it. It's up to you. If you can afford it, go ahead. Try to get what you can. But there are different price ranges for different things. So you could always get something. And you may have to spend a little bit, but at least you have something that will be viable and you can use, for the rest of your investigative career. But two-way radios also very highly recommended. You may need them. And again, as I said, a pen, a pencil, also essential because you want to write down things at the moment that you see, hear, experience, should your equipment fail. And it's always good to have a history. You may want to write up later on a report as well after you do your investigation. When I was investigating with Paranormal Investigation of NYC, we all did that. We all, after investigation, we would, write what we experienced. And I became quite proficient at, writing, about investigations or so. And I had my beginning and my end, my in-between, time period, identifying places, identifying who was there, the time you started investigation, the place that you went to, description of each spot, whether it's a room or a hall or whatever, anything that of interest that happened or occurred, what you did there, also your impressions, also at the end, what you observed, there, and your conclusions, also of the space, what you felt that you experienced. You write it out. Did you see something? Did you experience something? Did you see something? Did you capture it on video, on audio? Write everything down in a report. You're going to need that as well, especially if you're working for clients or so, or people you want to present, that evidence to them, not just verbally alone, not just with a camera or with an audio device. You want to have a written account of your experience as well. You want to save it on your computer. You also want to have a hard copy as well, just in case. God forbid something happens to your computer and it blows out. You want to have a history of your investigations. So it's always good to have a backup. So if you have a secondary hard drive, I recommend you back up everything from your system, investigations or not. Just in case your computer suddenly goes on the blink and your hard drive goes and it's just repair, you have your history with you, either on your secondary device or just in files, written down. You always want to have your evidence with you no matter what. It's part of your history. Part of that place's history is with your proof as well. It may be more valuable than you realize later on in the future. Should you go back again or something is found out at that site and you were there, first, you want to bring that in also as supplemental evidence, also of things that actually are proven to be there. So that is very important to have also. Retain your history also. Now, we're going to get a bit into some photos here of some of the sites that I've been to in the past regarding investigations or so. So we're going to be of a memory lane type of experience there. So this slide details the time that I did an investigation at the Bailey Seton Hospital in Staten Island. So this was back in December of 2010. So it's the 10th anniversary already. Wow, it's incredible. Doesn't seem that it was that long ago. A lot has happened, since then, obviously, especially with this year. And it's interesting that this is the anniversary month. So next week should be 10 years, well, 11 years at this point. No, 10 years, sorry, 2010. So 10 years since I did that investigation there. And that was very interesting because that investigation was put together by psychic medium Chris George. And this is in Staten Island. And Chris George is a well-known psychic medium here in the New York City area, Staten Island, New York. And he had or still has a team called Second Sight, based in Staten Island, and they did a number, of investigations, very deep investigations throughout New York City or so. So Chris was able to put together this big investigation at the abandoned Bailey Seton Hospital in Staten Island. And because I heard about it or so, whatever, oh God, I got to join in with this one. So I did. So it was I, along with Victor Furman, who is a fellow paranormal investigator from Paranormal Investigations of NYC. So we went, to this investigation, for the Bailey Seton Hospital. We were a group of about 40 people or so. It was a big investigation. It's a big hospital. It used to be a mental hospital, there for years. And at that time was mostly abandoned. And there was still a section that was active, however. So they were still open. They were still having patients there and still, seeing patients, and I think even housing patients in a particular area there. But for the majority of the site, it was abandoned. So we were able to get access, thanks to Chris, into that place. So it was Victor Furman and I representing Paranormal Investigations of NYC. There was also investigator Al Willen, there, who a very well-known, paranormalist and demonologist. That's when I met actually Al Willen, who we later on became very good friends, from that investigation. One of the best things that happened from that investigation was connecting with Al. So I got to meet Al there and his wife, Mary Ellen, who is also a paranormal investigator. So they had over 40 years of investigating experience already, there. So they came with their incredible equipment, or so they're wonderful people, wonderful people. Unfortunately, Al passed away, about a year and a half ago, suddenly. So that was a big loss to the paranormal community, as well as personally to many people, including me. But I know that Al, we miss him a lot. We miss him greatly. He was a wonderful person. But I know that Al is with all of us. And he has, connected with a variety of people. I'm fully aware of that. And I know that he's with us, always, and will be helping us out throughout the rest of our journey, here. But he was there, obviously, the paranormal team from the Finger Lakes, a paranormal group, were also there. So they came down from upstate New York, a big group of them, to do this investigation, because this is a very important and well-known haunted site there. So, and then Chris's team was there, Second Sight also. So a paranormal investigator, Chris Baraclow, was there, also with one or two of his people from his team, there, also because he's another established investigator, and he had a team, so they also came down as well. So there were a number of people, professionals, that came down to do this. And like I said, it was about over 40 people or more, at this site, and we spent the whole night there. And it's a very large, abandoned hospital. So, we went in there, we had our equipment, we explored, we investigated a great deal. Chris, as a medium, was able to connect with some of the spirits there, also at the site. So he's also like a trance medium as well. So he had an experience, there that was recorded. So there, and then we went about, and here's some of us here. And you can see I'm in the picture, the photo there. And this was in a particular area of the hospital. And we were there, getting ready to do our investigations. We're adjusting our equipment, as you can see. I was, getting my camera ready to take pictures of the site. And if you notice behind, there's a young man standing in an area there of this room. And he was in the space, and then he reported he started feeling kind of weakened and unwell while he was there. And he felt very drained of energy, and he just got ill. They had to help him out of there for a bit. He had to sit down and regain himself because he got very drained and feeling very unwell. And he was feeling fine prior to all of this. It was afterward, when we were all analyzing our photographs and whatever, and that we noticed, or that Chris, reported that in this particular photo, just before the young man was talking about feeling unwell, that if you notice on his shoulder, on his right, there was an energy that presented itself there. And if you look closely, you see that there's some sort of facial features, there, and some sort of energy that was captured. And then, so we've all were just, amazed, to experience that, to see this. And this seems to be some sort of an energy or entity that was there for some reason that seemed to attach itself, to him. He was fine afterward. He regained himself. He was fine. There was no residual things, as far as I know. It's been 10 years already. But as far as I know, he didn't have, any residual things that happened to him or so. But it was most fascinating that did occur, and that this was captured about what, a year or so ago? Yeah, about a year and a half ago or so. It was interesting because I was with Al Willen, actually, who I just mentioned before. And we were at a little bit of a meeting that he used to hold, for paranormal investigators or so once a month. So I happened to be there, and we were talking about the energies of spirits and the things that can attach to people or so, whatever. And he brought up about the time that we went to this investigation, and he had seen this photo, obviously. And he said, there was that photo that was put there that that energy that was next to that young man. So, oh, yeah, sure, I remember that very well. And that actually is a form of an energy or an entity that is kind of known. I forgot the exact name. He said that octopus looking type of thing, which if you look at it closely, it can look like that. It can look like, also a lot of people said it looks like Alf, that television character from that television show from the 1980s. And it does have a look like that as well. It looks like Alf also. But Al said that actually that's kind of a form of entity or anything that's kind of known. It's not the first time that something like that has been seen or experienced, by others. So that was fascinating to hear that, after all that time, that this entity is actually something that is known and has a name, to it. And so that added credibility to it. A lot of people were wondering if this is real or not. That was doctored in or so, just to look, real or whatever, or so it's fake or so. And that always happens with pictures and with evidence and with the paranormal field. There are a lot of people that are always going to say that, that's not real, that's been manufactured, that it's been doctored, that's been placed there. And that's why the paranormal science is so hard, to prove, because unfortunately there are a lot of people that have, fake pictures, fake things and whatever. And now with the computers and with digital devices or whatever, they do wonders, that things may look real, but they're actually not. So it's been very hard for the paranormal field to really get good, hard evidence that's really fact, that's really hard to, to disprove. And that's why the field has such a hard time in getting respect from other areas of science, because we don't have repeatable, things that we can do, and not that many anyway. And paranormal, scientists or so have worked very hard for decades or so trying to create things, and research and experiments or so that can be, that can be replicated, as they call, and that can be done over and over again and show that it always happens. It's very hard to present a replication with paranormal evidence, because a lot of times it's there and sometimes it's not. The spiritual is not something that lends itself to being proved or disproved. So it's very difficult to do. So the science, it has a hard time with regular science in being accepted with factual evidence. Moving along, so that was very fascinating there. Moving along, we have some other photos here. There's Reverend Victor in the same evening there. And we were in a room there that we found, there, and then the lights went out. So he's showing the difference when lights are out. And there he is with his flashlight there. And it was interesting because from that experience, Reverend Victor is very sensitive to spirit. And he was able to connect with the spirit of a young man that seemed to be lingering in the space that we were in. It was like just a region in there. It had some steps that you go down. And I don't know what the room was used for, because there's nothing there can tell you. But it was an abandoned spot there. And he felt that there was, there was the spirit of a young man there. And there was like a section there. There was some water thing, some equipment there. So there was something that they used with water there. So spirit tends to connect with water. It's a good conductor for psychic energies and things, electricity or so. So he picked up on the spirit of this young man who for some reason was lingering there. And he and I were helpful in having this young man's spirit free, from the space. So the picture that you see there is of me, holding his hand, there. And Reverend Victor asked me to hold out your hand because he's right next to you and help him. We're going to guide him away. We're going to guide him into the light. And as I held that, I could feel an energy, there as that actually occurred, there. And with Reverend Victor being a reverend, as was a paranormal investigator, he was able to invocation as well, and he was able to release this young man's spirit, from the site, there. So we were able to accomplish that evening, because there's a number of spirits in the space. They either live there or they pass by or whatever, or they linger there for whatever reasons or so. Remember, this is a mental hospital for many, many years. A lot of these people and their spirits tend to retain and keep themselves there. And a lot of times they're intelligent spirits. Sometimes they just might be, you know, just a recording that repeats itself over and over again, because we have intelligent spirits and then we have those that are just, you know, imprints, as we call them. It's just something that is just there, but it's not conscious. But it can present itself either visually or through audio or through some sort of movement or whatever, and it's repetition, like a film. So there's a combination of spiritual activity that was there at the hospital. So you can see some of the other areas of the hospital here, where we were at. And this was the space where the young man was hanging out, actually. So you can see it's very, you know, abandoned there for decades or so. And then a number of other things, you know, happened as well with other spirits as well, also that Chris, you know, picked up on as well. And people, you know, had recordings or so in the course of the evening. We spent hours there, like practically what, 3 or 4 in the morning, you know, there. And we started the evening like about what, 8 or so. We were there till like about, I think about 2 or 3 or so. So we spent a lot of time there. Very big space, lots of areas to cover, lots of people. So we were all over that environment, and we convened towards the end, you know, there. And, you know, we did, you know, a ritual there, you know, for the spirits, you know, helping them to be free of the space there. So it's quite a fascinating place. Then moving along, I've also had the good fortune of going to do investigations at the Queen Mary Ocean Liner and Hotel located in Long Beach, California. So the Queen Mary was an ocean liner that was built in 1931, you know, in Scotland. And it was one of the largest, you know, ocean liners to sail the seas, you know, at that time. The Queen Mary was so large that actually the Titanic could fit right inside of the Queen Mary. So imagine, if we're going back to 1912 or so, during the Titanic, at that time, the Titanic was the largest ship ever to sail the seas. And even though it just had its one, you know, maiden and ill-fated voyage that we all know about, but it was the largest ocean liner back in the 19-teens. After that, we had a series of other ocean liners, like the Queen Mary at that time in the 1930s was the largest at that time to sail. It had quite an illustrious history, and it sailed from what, 1931 all the way to 1966, 67 when it was decommissioned. And finally, Queen Mary also sailed during World War II and was used, you know, as a ship that used to transport, you know, personnel, you know, from the Air Force, from the Army, from the Navy, or so. The Allied forces, you know, were, you know, part of this, and the Queen Mary was decommissioned as a passenger ship and pressed into service for military, you know, people, and sailed back and forth across New York and to England numerous times, carrying cargo, carrying, you know, soldiers back and forth, you know, to fight, you know, during World War II in Europe. So it has quite an illustrious history. Along with it, a few tragedies along the way. Once when it had a big accident, it crashed, unfortunately, into the smaller ship Carpathia. I forgot what year that was or so, but it sustained, you know, some big heavy damage towards the bow, you know, there of the ship alongside. So they had to press it out of service again for about a year until it was, you know, repaired. But unfortunately, because of the Carpathia, numerous people were killed, unfortunately, during that accident. And then we've had a few other incidents that occurred there too, of people, you know, dying either on ship, aboard ship, you know, also or so. So with all of that said, it is known that the Queen Mary is one of the most haunted sites in the United States, and in fact, in the world. And psychic medium Peter James, who many of you may know from the 1990 series Sightings, when he used to appear there doing, you know, his paranormal investigations. You know, he was the resident psychic in the 1990s or so, perhaps 1980s, all the way up to until, unfortunately, his passing in 2007 or so. He was a resident psychic. He conducted regular investigations, you know, on board ship. So he used to do investigations for the public at least twice a month. as well as investigations for more private concerns and those, and for serious paranormal investigators as well. So he did a number of those there. You can find some of those actually on YouTube. They are there. And you can see Peter in action. He was brilliant and marvelous. And he had quite an extraordinary, career as a psychic medium. He was truly one of the best psychic mediums in the world. And he passed away, unfortunately, because heart condition, etc. So in 2007, I unfortunately did not get a chance to meet him, but he was my inspiration for going on board the Queen Mary to see it myself and to explore it. And I've been fortunate enough to do 3 different investigations. I mean, not in all, the same time period, but 3 different investigations. I went 2008. I do believe I went back in 2010, which is listed here. And then again, as recently as 2016. We've stayed on ship. It's a hotel. So we stayed on board, and I've been able to do all the investigations that they have available there. I've met some fascinating people too along the way. So here you see the ship. I had to divide the pictures in 2 because it was just too tremendous, I had to take in one picture. It gives you an idea. Below you see here the swimming pool area, which is one of the most haunted locations on site. It's the first class swimming pool area where it is known that the spirit of Jackie, who is apparently a little girl who unfortunately drowned in the swimming pool there back in the 1930s or so, still is in the space. And many people have connected with Jackie throughout the years. She's one of the most vocal spirits in the world. When Peter was on board, he established a relationship with Jackie, and he was able to communicate, with her. And to such an extent, and because of Peter's gift being so strong, everybody could hear Jackie talking back or singing back to him and communicating clearly and loudly. There is video of this exchange on YouTube, which you can find. So all you have to do is you go into YouTube, just type in Psychic Peter James, and that'll bring up many of his various, videos there, including those on board the Queen Mary, and you can actually see and hear him connecting and communicating with Jackie, aboard ship. So it is one of the most well-known investigation sites there. This is an area here. And this is also the changing room, which is also one of the most haunted sites there on ship as well, right next to the swimming pool. There's a swimming pool in the dark here. So you can see that also. And, it's really quite impressive. And numerous investigations take place there regularly, throughout the years. And people have captured evidence, have captured orbs, have captured sounds, from this place. You go in there. I mean, I've been in there myself. Many of you know that I'm a sensitive and I am a psychic. I'm able to attune and feel spirit and connect with them from time to time. And I've been in this space and I can feel the energy there and I can feel the history. And I know that there's something active in this entire area of the swimming pool and of that dressing room. Also, this is the women's changing room in particular. Moving along, we have here the hallways here of the Queen Mary. Many of them are known to be haunted as well. And this should be probably, let's see, I think this is the front deck here where we've stayed a number of times. If you look closely at the center, there's an orb, there, here, that is captured, here with this picture. So we have that there. Here we have more photos of the swimming pool area itself. You can see there are orbs here as well that you can see that people capture. And this picture also here has an orb somewhere. It's a little small here, but there's also 1 or 2 orbs here. Again, pointing over here and up here somewhere, there's an orb that I've captured, on video and camera as well here of the space. So this is the first class swimming pools when I went in July of 2010. So we have that there. And then I explored many other areas. I explored the place where that famous room where the woman died or so, and they had an ongoing investigation going on there in that room for years. And nobody stayed in that room. And it was left specifically there just for investigations, and they had a camera running, like 24 hours to see if they could capture evidence, because people had seen and experienced, spirit there, and apparitions and sounds and noises and things moving about in that room. And so they had that as an ongoing investigation, and they would take the public in from time to time to see it and to capture, video, audio, but no one could stay there until the last few years, where now, because of the need for money, because these places are in all of them are in need of money and finance in order to keep such a large ship running. You have to have, money in order to do that. And the money wasn't coming in. So now they fixed the room so you can actually rent it, and you can stay there, and you can, do your investigations and, see if you have some experience, there. So you have that happening there now too. Our next site here is Tombstone, Arizona. So I happened to go there because I needed to see this for myself. Tombstone is one of the most haunted places in the United States, also the entire town. And it is staying as pristine as it was back in 1888, when it was in its heyday. And one of the most haunted sites there is the famous Birdcage Theater. So I was able to do an investigation and seance at the Birdcage Theater, one evening. I also met my very dear friend, Nova, who's one of the people that works at the Birdcage Theater, there. And she is also a guide and a wealth of information and knowledge about the theater and about Tombstone. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. And again, one of the best things that came from going to Tombstone was meeting Nova. We're still connected, on Facebook. So I've tried to connect with many people always in all the sites I've gone to. She's a wonderful, wonderful person, as well as many of the other people that live and work in Tombstone. They're wonderful, wonderful people, with a lot of knowledge and experience, down home, down to earth. Marvelous, wonderful people. I recommend, if you ever have the chance, to please go visit Tombstone, Arizona. It truly is a fascinating historical place, and you'll get a lot out of it. It's the Wild West still alive and kicking. It's not as wild as it was back, in the late 19th century, certainly, when Wyatt Earp was there and his brothers and the OK Corral, but everything is there. It's all intact. You will get to see the site of the OK Corral. You'll get to see reenactments of that, event. You'll get to go to the Birdcage Theater. It is kept as it was back in the late 1800s. It's incredible. The site up here is, the balcony areas. That is as it was. Everything is authentic as it was back then. Nothing is touched except to clean when it's necessary. But everything that you see here is as it was. You're literally going back in time there. And the Birdcage Theater is reputedly, fascinatingly haunted. And there have been many experiences there with ghosts and spirits and things. And Nova herself has, told and has seen, ghosts and things appear there, as well. So from someone who's so credible and so real as she, she said that that's really happened, and that indeed happened. That means that ghosts are real, and that does occur there. You see photos here of the Black Maria, the legendary mortuary cart that was used on a daily basis when the Wild West was in full fling, and Tombstone. And there were murders every day in Tombstone back then in the late 1800s. It really was the wickedest city in the United States. I mean, the corruption was wild there. The cowboys were wild, and the shootouts were every day. Every day you had to run for cover. And there they utilized the Black Maria, to carry the bodies, to Boot Hill Cemetery once, twice, 3 times a day or more even, because people were killed every single day there, and they pressed the Black Maria into service. And because of that, the Black Maria itself has been known to have paranormal activity, with it. And people have seen, have heard things, from it as well. Below, the Birdcage Theater, there is a basement level. And this is where the high poker players, or what they used to call the game of Faro, which is what they used to play in the Wild West with cards and gambling, as well as the upstairs was famous for that too. It was a saloon, it was entertainment, piano players, vaudeville acts used to play there. Gambling was there, drinking, of course. The bar is incredible there. There's a picture of the bar that I'll show, I think, in a moment. And and everybody was there. All the famous historical figures used to go there regularly. Wyatt Earp, his brothers, Virgil Earp, or so, and Morgan Earp, Doc Holliday, they were all there. Big Nose Kate, who owned Big Kate Nose Saloon, which is still there, absolutely beautiful, just a few doors away from here, was there. All these famous historical figures used to hang out at the Birdcage Theater. Back then it was a different time, it was a different area. And all of this is haunted. All of this is haunted. These are the actual chairs and tables that they used from 150 years ago or more. It's still all there. And that has a lot of haunted activity too. Here we have the backstage there of the Birdcage Theater. Down below, right next to that faro table there in the basement area where the high rollers used to go and play private games there. There were also, the Birdcage Theater was also known as a house of prostitution. So we had a lot of lovely young ladies who used to work at the Birdcage Theater as, ladies of the evening. So those booths that you saw before in the previous photo up here, and like I said, people have seen and heard, spirits, apparitions appear here from time to time. These booths are where the ladies would entertain the gentlemen, as they could see, below on the floor below, as people were gambling and the entertainment or so, and they were there, to entertain, their clients, and they could entertain quite liberally, there, to put it nicely, their clients there too. It was a different era, honey. It was a different time period, but they also had their own private rooms below, and some of the more, well-established ladies of the evening who actually you even lived in the Birdcage Theater had their spaces there where they would, apply their trade in private, there. So those rooms are also well preserved. And this room in particular happens to be the room of Josephine Earp. Now, Josephine was a lady of the evening, but this is where she and Wyatt met at the Birdcage, and they fell instantly in love. And in time, they married, and they stayed together to the rest of Wyatt's life. After they moved on from Tombstone, they stayed together and went out to California, and they lived out in California to the 1920s or so. I think that Wyatt passed away sometime in the 1920s, 1930s or so. They were still together. So it was genuine and real love. It was a different time and a different era. Now, this room, of course, is cordoned off, but you can't see it. The door is open and you can look into this room. And this is where Josephine, lived and worked. And this is where she and Wyatt also spent time together. And this was her room. And that was her mirror. That was her makeup mirror, as you could call it. Everything here is authentic. Now, if you look at that mirror, there's an image there. That image is representing, saying that that was the image of Josephine Earp. And somehow it's been remained there for some unexplainable reason. I don't know all the details, but that's an image that has remained there all these years. That mirror is never touched. If you look closely, you can see an image of a face appearing there. Very interesting, isn't it? Fascinating. That appears to be the image of Josephine Earp after all these years. Like I said, the Birdcage is full of paranormal history and activity. That's one of the most prominent things that were captured there. When I was doing or participating in the seance that Nova was running that evening, and we stayed there till late, we did the seance behind the stage of the Birdcage Theater. And there's a big table there right in front of the back with a Black Mariah there present. And a group of us, sat in a circle, and we lit a candle and we started doing a seance and run by Nova. And as we were sitting there, I was capturing an energy. I got a sense of an energy or so. And I was saying, there's a woman. I get the sense of a woman present. And I gave out a name of this person, of the name that I was getting, there. And then Nova said to me, oh my God, that name was my grandmother's name. And it wasn't a common name either. And it's not a name that I certainly am familiar with. That's what just came from me to say. And she immediately recognized it as the name of her grandmother. So that was quite an experience, to have, there, in the Birdcage Theater. So it is a historic place, a historic site, and many things there that are pristine. We stayed there for almost a week. you know, there in Tombstone, wonderful people. We're still friends with some of them there. And my mother went, because my mother goes everywhere. She enjoyed it a great deal. She found it fascinating. She never dreamed she'd ever go all the way out to rural Arizona, but there she was. And she, you know, embraced the experience and enjoyed, you know, learning about the history and meeting the people there as well. And so the town is just there. It's about an hour and a half away from Tucson. I drove, you know, from Tucson. It's an easy trip. You go on Highway 1, Highway 10, it's straight, you know, down. You can't miss it. And it's an hour and a half, you know, to travel from Tucson. But it's a good trip, fascinating place. You'll learn a lot of history. You'll get a feel of the Old West. You really are stepping back in time there. Moving along. From there, I was going to say one more thing. I'm trying to remember what it was to let you know. Let me see. So it's the Birdcage Theater. Oh, yeah. Big Nose Kate Saloon is absolutely beautiful, and they have entertainment there. So, oh, yes, the Birdcage Theater was renowned, you know, for vaudeville acts, you know, there. A lot of famous, you know, acts, you know, went to perform there. I do believe Al Jolson performed there. And also in the opera star Enrico Caruso came one time and performed at the stage of the Birdcage Theater. So that was incredibly impressive, you know, to hear. That was an incredible time period. The whole town came out, you know, for Enrico Caruso, you know, as he, you know, did a performance on the stage of the Birdcage Theater. I was lucky enough to be able to stand on the stage of the Birdcage Theater. That was a thrill. All of it was a thrill to be in that place and to see this and to be in the same places that Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp and the Earp brother, the Clanton brothers were there. The cemetery, Boot Hill Cemetery is right there, right in the outskirts of town. We went to visit that too. I have pictures of that also. And so it was incredible to be there and to be in the same footsteps of these incredible historic people and learn about them. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And also with some supernatural events that happened too. Moving along, we also did a second investigation of the Bailey Seton Hospital. So we went back a year later, you know, to do a second investigation of the hospital again in Staten Island with Chris George and the team from Second Sight. And this time we explored some other areas of the hospital. So you see some pictures here. I do know that Bailey Seton Hospital is still there 10 years later and still abandoned. I hope that one day, especially once the coronavirus is over, that perhaps an investigation can be done again, you know, there at this incredible site. And now that there's more sophisticated, you know, equipment, we're able to do that there. And with a good, strong team of people. And we had another group of at least 40 people, you know, go once again, return, you know, to the site. You know, here we explored some different buildings and some buildings with some very interesting and twisted energy. You know, there, like a lot of the public space for the patients there, where they did some interesting things, including fights and a few murders, you know, took place up there in a particular building up there on the 3rd floor or so. So we examined that, and they tried to do some EVP work, and Chris, you know, tried to do some connections there, and I tried to connect with some spirit there as well. We had a big patio outside space. I was able to go outside. Here's some pictures here. That's not a spirit, that's a person. That's just a fascinating picture of the hospital. You can see the hallways there, light and dark. And moving to the next slide. This was a picture that I took that evening there. And there was a stairwell. So I took a picture because I was drawn to it. And it wasn't until later on that I noticed that there was some sort of like a dark kind of figure. If you can see, you make the outline here. So there seemed to be some sort of shadow, you know, here on the corner at the very top of the stairs. And I can assure you that was not my shadow, because I wasn't standing, you know, there in front of this to take that picture. There's no light source there to cast a shadow as well, you know, also. And I was standing at the bottom, first of all, and I wasn't standing there, you know, directly in front, as I'm trying to indicate here. I was like more over this area over here and over here in this section. And again, there was no way to cast a shadow because there was no light source. So I happened to notice that this shadow figure, you know, was there. So that was interesting to me. It took me a long time to really see this. I didn't see that at the beginning when I was analyzing these photos, 9 years ago. And I just noticed this a while back. I said, oh my God, there seems to be some sort of shadow figure. Isn't that fascinating there? Moving along, up on the building that I described earlier, where it was like the recreation area on the 3rd floor there, one of the old buildings. And there's a big like patio space. So we stepped out. It was cold because it was a December evening. Once again, it was frigid, or February, I'm sorry. February evening was as frigid as hell, honey. Okay. So, no, I'm sorry. Excuse me. It was a December. It's a year later, right? Again, excuse me. It's Friday. And, I've been working all week. I'm a bit, frazzled. But nevertheless, it was a year later or so. We're out in the patio out there, the balcony. There's a large balcony where the patients used to, go out and sun themselves or sit around, hang out there. There used to be tables and chairs that they used to be able to like get some fresh air, or so, very large space around that perimeter of the building. So we went out there and I took some pictures. It was a dark evening. There was no moonlight. There was no really close light sources either. What you see here is the flash, from camera or from the video camera that we were utilizing. You notice that up in the sky, there was some orbs in the environment there. When I was taking the picture, I did not see any orbs there. That was captured afterward, when we were doing our analyzing. And then this photo here was one of the most fascinating pictures of the evening. Now, I took this photo, and it was in the same space up there. And if you can make it out, when I took the picture, it was pitch black, that sky. There was nothing there. But when I analyzed the photos after and put them up here on the computer to see if, and I hope you can see this, there was some sort of a mist, like in a figure, here, and I'm outlining it for you. And I hope that you can see this. So there was like this mist that appeared there. And I assure you, there was no, nothing there when I took this photo. There are no buildings in the background that could have smoke. There was no chimneys or smokestacks or nothing behind there in that area. It was open space. Buildings that are there are too far out, and it was completely dark. However, this mist and this energy in the form of a figure appeared in the photograph, hovering, up there, as you can see that here. So coming from here and here, I hope you can make that out. And that was fascinating. I did see that immediately when I looked in my camera. Once we went back inside, and I was out there with 2 friends of mine, became friends of mine, who were also doing investigations there as well. There was Tracy Mueller and Margaret Karub. So the 3 of us were out there when I took this photograph. And the ladies can corroborate, that there was nothing there because they were seeing the same thing that I was seeing when I was taking the photo, and they saw nothing there. When we came back inside and I started looking at the pictures I was analyzing from there, I noticed immediately, even the camera, oh, look at that. There's some sort of a form there, some sort of energy. And they saw that as well. Oh my God, that was like incredible to see. And I showed it to Chris, there at the time. And he was like, he looked, his eyes opened up. He was like, oh, as well. So that was impressive for all of us to see this, appear, in this photograph there in that, that place. So that was fascinating there. Now, photos that I'm showing here at this point are from Letchworth Village. So I did this investigation in 2015. And this was an investigation that was put together by a gentleman named Wes Anderson and by Alexandra Holzer. So I mentioned her earlier this evening. Alexandra is the daughter of Hans Holzer, the father of paranormal investigations, or so, the person who coined that term, as well as the person who wrote about 150 books on the paranormal. And Dr. Holzer is a legend, and he truly was really the first person to really make, paranormal investigations respectable because he followed the scientific approach, but he also utilized, mediums as well. So he used metaphysical as well as scientific approach, to his investigations. If many of you have been seeing, there's a new series called the Holzer Files. And they just started their second season recently, I think last month or so. And the Holzer Files are investigations that Hans Holzer himself, partook of and did at least 50 years ago or more. And Alexandra was gracious enough to give, permission to release those files, to utilize for this series. So if you've seen this series, you can tell that there's a group of new investigators who are following in the steps of Hans Holzer, and they're going back to these sites that Hans went to all those years ago. He, along with mediums, Ethel Myers and Ethel Myers and Dame Sybil Leek, who is a very famous, English investigator and witch, way back in England from long ago. They were very, very well respected and world-renowned mediums. As well, recently, they also showed an investigation where the famous Irish medium, Eileen Garrett, also worked with Hans Holzer as well in investigations as well. They just gave that one the last week or so with Eileen Garrett. And Eileen Garrett was also the founder of the Paranormal Foundation, Parapsychology Foundation here in New York City, about 60 years ago or so. And I had been to the Parapsychology Foundation. I know, Eileen Garrett's granddaughter, Lisette Coley, who is now the CEO and the president of the Parapsychology Foundation. So it has stayed in the family and follows a long line, of people well-versed in parapsychology and its history. And prior to Lisette Coley, her mother, Eileen Coley, who was the daughter of Eileen Garrett, was the president of the Parapsychology Foundation. So it has stayed in the family all these years, and they run it with excellence and with a concern for education and promoting, the science, but as well as the spiritual aspects, of parapsychology and the parasciences as well. They also have the foundation also sponsors one student, a year, also to come spend a week at the Parapsychology Foundation in Greenport, Long Island, where their vast library is located. And that person is able to spend a week, there, all expenses paid, doing research, on a particular subject, to do a paper and to gain their thesis or whatever they're on the study in the field of parapsychology. So they're a strong educational institute with decades of experience and renown. So they're still out there doing what they do. And here we come back again to Alexandra Holzer because, again, her father, Dr. Holzer, worked with Eileen Garrett in doing paranormal investigations and, and research. And so they decided to go to Letchworth Village for this one. So Alexandra and Wes, invited the public who were interested to go do an investigation at this abandoned hospital. When I saw this, my eyes went wide open because I have a long history with Letchworth Village, going back decades. And very quickly, it's because of my brother, my older brother. Many people don't know that I have an older brother. My older brother was born with mental retardation. And he was placed in this institute as a child, because going back in time, back there when he was a child, the sciences weren't what they were today. And there wasn't much in regards to of assistance in order to help people who were born with retardation or challenges, whether it was autism, regular retardation, Down syndrome. There wasn't the help and the medical care that there is now. Back then, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, etc., they just didn't know that much about this. My brother was born profoundly retarded, and it was a little bit, it took a lot out of my mother and my father to have to take care of this hyperactive child who was diagnosed retarded at the age of 2. And they did their best, but they needed help. They couldn't do it on their own. The child was 5, 6 years of age, and it was just too much. and there wasn't the support from the medical aspects as there are now. They didn't have institutes, that we have all over the place now. They didn't have education, didn't have schools where they could help with these children and teach them, things and help them evolve their minds as best as. And there wasn't that support back then. So my parents had to, unfortunately, and with heaviness of heart, they had to place him in an institute, where luckily there was institutes, at least here in the New York area, at the time, that could help take care of this child and help give him the support that was needed. And he was taken well care of all this for his entire life there at Letchworth Village. And they had a very strong state program there, luckily. And this was not like a horror story so much as we heard like from Willowbrook or so. This was a place that, had, nurses, had round the clock care, had doctors, had nurses, had psychiatrists. It was part of the state, funding as well. So this is a responsible place where people were well taken care of, luckily. My parents were always on top of my brother, always. He was not someone who was left there and forgotten and only seen once or twice a year or so. They would go religiously every weekend to see him. Every Sunday, they would go there. They would take the trip up to upstate New York. This is located in Fields, New York, by the Palisades. So it's about, from here, especially an hour, drive, usually with good traffic. So it's not that far. But they did that for the rest of their lives. They would go there once a week. Later on, as they got a little older, and he got older too, they would go every 2 weeks instead. But he was already, an adolescent and already in his early 20s. Didn't have to go every single week. He was no longer a child. He was very well taken care of. They were always there. We always get reports. He is still living up there. It's no longer Letchworth Village. That closed down, the institute. But the consumers, as they call them, were transferred to private homes. So the state does have still and continues assisting these consumers, these people born with these problems and these limitations. So he lives in a beautiful home with 5 other people that they have established all throughout the area up there in the county. And he has a beautiful home that's so beautiful, we should all be so lucky to live there. With round-the-clock care, nurses, doctors come to check them regularly, their medications or so. They have activities, events as they were when they were younger, as children as well. They take them out, they go to different places, they go to the circus, they go to Broadway shows, they take them out sometimes for a week out in Long Island for a vacation, and they stay out there and they give them fresh air, and they play baseball, they have activities. My brother participated in the Paralympics even out there, even won a medal or so there for running. Also, he was always a fast runner. And so he's been taken care of and very blessed there. But I must digress. Letchworth Village, where it used to be, is no longer active and is closed and has been abandoned, many of the buildings. Some places have been built up, others are abandoned. So when I heard about this investigation, I was at Letchworth Village, I just had to go. So I connected with Wes Anderson. I told him my story. He said, oh, please, absolutely come and tell us, because this place is now known as being haunted. And really, that's something else. That corroborated my sense, because we go to visit my brother as much as we can. And my mother is still, and I are still very aware of him. And we are in constant communication with the people that take care of him there. Whenever we can, we go up there. Now, due to the pandemic, unfortunately, we're not able to go. We haven't seen him in a long, long time. Believe it or not, it's going to be, like 10 months. It's almost a year since we've been able to see him because the restrictions for the coronavirus, we just can't. But we are in constant communication over the phone. And so whatever with the people there, they know it as well. So we're aware of him and his health and his activities and how he's doing. He's luckily doing fine. Everything is just working out beautifully for him there. And, but however, I always had a feeling as we went to travel up there, my mother and I, because my father passed in 2004, so I had to take over, and driving up there with my mother, there. And I would pass by, because we had to pass by Letchworth Village in order to get to see him, where he lives now. And I see some of the abandoned buildings there. And I said, geez, I have the feeling that there are things going on from a spiritual plane, a paranormal. And sure enough, when Wes and Alexandra came up with this, it corroborated what I was sensing, that indeed, that Letchworth Village or the abandoned buildings there or whatever are reputedly haunted. And there's some activities that is going on there. Audio, video, etc., apparitions, etc. So I just had to go. So I was invited to go, and I got to do an investigation with them, there. So these photos I took of some of the abandoned buildings there, as you can see, it was interesting, anomaly, like visions or things that happened with this particular photo. There was nothing of the sort when I took this photo there. When it came out, all this kind of like whatever mist or so was in the environment. Very peculiar. This picture, I don't know what this came from as well. Another anomalous, light or so there. So that was fascinating. Here we have a picture of outside of the hospital, the back of the abandoned hospital. We were able to get in there, also and explore the area there. We were also able to get into the large cafeteria, building where all of the consumers, the patients used to go, for breakfast or for lunch, there, and even for dinner, also they would all take them there. There were hundreds of people that were in this space. When it was in its active heyday, as they call it, there were hundreds of patients, living and working there. And they had their own gardens. For the patients that were more high level, they had jobs, there, so they could work tending the farmland that they had there. They used to grow corn and vegetables there. They would sell to the public. And there were other jobs and activities. It was a very busy place. And they were always going back and forth. They had activities there going on all the time. So it's a very lively, active place. The consumers were taken very well care of there. They were always very busy. They weren't just sitting around doing nothing there. They were being rehabilitated to the best of their ability, stimulating their minds or so, well taken care of, even to this day. They follow the same, protocols and traditions for that. And so when I went into the cafeteria space, it was very interesting because I got into some of the buildings, including the building where my brother lived for years, which is now abandoned, and took photographs there or so. And it was incredible to see it as it was now, as it was back so long ago, 30 years ago or so, when it was active and there were beds and there were people living there. Such a change. It's incredible to see this, to see the history has this unfolded as I saw it from my childhood and long back, as it was when it was pristine and just such a wonderful, lively place or so, to now an abandoned, nothing there, and things broken and peeling walls and abandoned furniture. It's just incredible to experience that. It truly is. I can't even put it into words exactly for you. But one thing that occurred when I was there was, and here's some more, this is in the hospital down below, so you can see how incredibly eerie, this looks. I know that Ghost Adventures went to Letchworth Village, and they did an investigation there, and they went to the hospital. And they went into a room there where they were a laboratory where they used to conduct experiments, apparently, in some way or so. And when they were there were jars. And the jars contained brains of some of the people who had passed away there. And the scientists there or so, did their autopsies and, and did experiments or research on brains of certain individuals just to find out, to do research, to find out about what could be the cause of retardation in the mind, in the brain itself. But when they left the space, they weren't as responsible as they should have been. And they left some of those jars with some of the materials there. And I know that the team from Ghost Adventures were able to see that and to capture that, on video, and they presented that on their show. When we were there, that was taken out, apparently, because I went after that show, obviously. So when we went to the same room or so, it was very eerie type of feeling, and again with the history there, and the jars were gone. That was no longer present. So someone had the foresight of mind to remove that, from there. But we were still in the same space as they were. We conducted investigations. There were people doing EVP work there. When we were there, they did ghost box. They captured some evidence. I know there was a lady there who was a medium who was saying she was seeing one or two spirits outside or about in the area or so, because she just was able to see them that well. The only experience that I had along that kind of level was when we went to the cafeteria. And we went in there, and I turned to my right, and there was a space there that was more like a recreation space, not the main cafeteria itself. But when I got in there, I got the sense of a presence, and I could see in my mind's eye that suddenly this person just started coming over, appearing and walking toward me. I said, oh, and again, this was in my mind's eye. And I could see this, oh my God. And he kind of said hello, he was friendly, and he was one of the former consumers there who had passed long ago, but he still liked to hang out there. And I just got this incredible connection there. So I asked him, why are you still here? And he said, because I like to come back. This was where I lived, and this is where I had my friends here. He gave me a few names of some other friends. He said, that table there, we used to sit there. And we used to socialize, we used to hang out there. And of course, he's no longer in the state that he was, so he could be very clear and coherent. With me, he was no longer, a patient. His mind was completely clear and beautiful. So he could converse very well with me. But he said, but he liked to be there from time to time because it brought back memories. He had good feelings of the place. He used to hang out with his friends there, and they used to hang out and they spent their lives there. So it had sentimental feelings for him. I used to like to be in the space, but he was perfectly lovely, perfectly friendly. And I didn't feel like there was any sorrow for him. And he was seeing it the way he was seeing it back then, not the way it was now as it is. He may have been conscious of the way it is now, but that wasn't a bother to him. And he wasn't really hanging out or being malingering in the space. He would visit more than just being there nonstop, which brought peace of mind to me to hear. And so that was the one impression that I got, there. I didn't get, my brother's still alive, obviously, if there's no connection there. I didn't get a connection with any other people that I knew from there or so. And, but him, that experience occurred. And he was perfectly fine. And we said farewell, and basically, and, peace to you. And that was my experience, there at the site there, but it was lovely. And it was a good thing to see. But there are other things and other things that occurred there that were not so wonderful, too. I can't say that it was a paradise, living there or being there. There were reports of things that were not so positive. Also, as we've learned, all of these places, have their positives and their negatives. Some have more negatives than others. Luckily for Letchworth Village, the negatives aren't as horrific as some of the other places that we've heard about in the past, in the news. So that kind of brings kind of a peace of mind to us. And my brother was well taken care of, among many others that we knew there also, and families. And their experience was certainly not of the negative, fortunately. And many of them still live today, as testament to that. So moving along from there, let me show you another facet. And we're going a little bit beyond time, but there's a lot to cover here. So we're almost done anyway at this point. I had seen this incredible building back around 2005 or so. And this was in Paranormal Investigations of New York City's meetup page back then. They used to do monthly meetups in Brooklyn, and they still, prior before the pandemic, they still do, and they just moved them over to Manhattan, now. But they've always had, once a month where the public can come in and speak with us and learn about investigations, find out, about what we do, how we do them. They could tell about their own experiences with the paranormal and converse, with like-minded people and feel comfortable, meeting in a comfortable space, in a safe space. So when I first met the team, actually I found them through Meetup, actually. I was searching back in 2005, for a paranormal investigative group. I had tried to do that a number of years before, never could find one. And the ones that were there, they had these mysterious, web pages where you had to connect with them through email. And they had kind of these 3 little pages with, with little ghosts, going boom and traveling up or so, animations or so. And it was very hard to connect with them. I can understand why, because they want to be ridiculed or so. And it was just kind of weird and strange. Then Spirit just had me do a search one day and go down and caught my eye on Google, actually, of Paranormal Investigations NYC. And for some reason, I was drawn to that. I said, I read a bit. It seemed credible. Clicked into the website. The website was wonderful, well put together. Was it mysterious or strange? All the information was there. It was very clear, very concise, well written. They promoted what they saw. They had their pictures. They had their investigations. They talked about, all these different things, who the team members were. No mystery there whatsoever. No, hiding around, and good and concrete contact information. So you could email them, you could write them. They promoted their meetups that they had once a month, where the other pages did not do that. That you could actually meet these people in a public space, safe. And you can connect them through Meetup. So that's what I did. I connected in a Meetup page and clicked in. And I went in 2005, August of 2005, to my first meeting in Brooklyn. And immediately when I got there, we saw each other and it was just magic. We just clicked. As Dom likes to say, the founder, he said he saw me and he just opened his eyes and, oh, and the first thought that came to his mind was, I know you. And when I looked at him, when I saw his picture before, I had a feeling, there was something there that drew me as well. There was something there that this was real. And he hadn't seen me prior, obviously. He just saw me as the person who just wanted to join the meeting. And we met there and we just all clicked. And I was some of the other team members and we just felt comfortable, like it was right. And it was just a wonderful, fun experience to have. And then like about a week or so later, he invited me to interview with him. So I did, and I told him that I'm a sensitive and I do psychic work. So this is great. I've been looking for a medium or a psychic or something. So this is perfect. And I told him I was very interested in this and whatever, how I work. And he said, fine. Do you want to join our team and join an investigation? So that's how I started from there. So I digress again. So in his paranormal meetup page, there were some pictures of haunted sites or whatever. And then there was a picture of this site, but there was no explanation. I said, my God, that's incredible, that place. This is like the quintessential haunted house. I asked him about it. He said, I don't know. I just found that picture. I thought it was interesting. He had no idea what it was. So from time to time, I'd see this picture and I tried to find out, couldn't find anything. But then a few years ago, back in, I guess, 2014 or so, I took the picture and I started just to see if I could find something about haunted buildings or so. And I found it in Google once again. And then there was a name to the place. And it was incredible to see that it was located in upstate New York. And I found out about the history of the Bennett School for the Girls, this abandoned college, way back from, oh my God, from the 1930s or so or whatever. And this particular building was called Halcyon Hall. That place and that picture always stayed with me. So one day, and when I found out it was in New York, I want to go see this place for myself. But then I learned that it was abandoned for many, many years and falling apart more and more. And at one time you could go in there, even you had to sneak in, you had to be careful because the police would be patrolling or so, but some people managed to get in there. And you can go into Google and just type in Bennett School for Girls and you'll see a variety of web pages about the place, its history, numerous pictures, including a fascinating video, which I once placed on my page, and with a drone, and pictures that people, when they were able to get in there, got in there. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Now you can't. Now it's all cordoned off, it's fenced in, and you trespass, you better be very careful because they can arrest you. But you can't get in there. The fence is simply too high. So anyway, one time in 2016, I said, you know what? I was reading about it again because I got an interest. I said, oh, but the place has been torn down. Oh, no. I said, no, the place is still there. Just cannot get into it. I said, okay. So before this place gets torn down, because they're planning to do something finally, I decided to go up there and see it for myself. So one weekend in September, that's exactly what happened. We went up there. I took the drive. It was like 2 hours from here to Millbrook, New York, where this is located. I was able to get the address, and with the GPS, I was able to actually find it. The beautiful place in upstate New York, not too far from Poughkeepsie. So that drive is incredible. And I got to see the place for myself. So this picture that you see here is actually mine. And I took this photo of the place, and it was incredible. I went all around. I drove all around. There is a strong fence there. It's like 10 feet tall. You cannot get in. Big signs are there. There was just to get there, I had to park the car in front, and then there was a bit of like a trench covered with bushes and trees. So I had to go into the trench and come out and finally surface out there and be on this land and see the house from there and get a sense of it. So I was able to take this picture along with several others also, as you can see as well. So this is when the lighting was different. You can see the house from this angle, and it is reputedly haunted. People have said they have heard sounds in the area because their homes, there are people that live around, there are private homes out there or so. There's some acreage there, so some other older buildings there too, not as fascinating as this one, but it's all been abandoned. I think they abandoned in the 1970s, like 1976 was the last time it was in use. They had planned to turn it into a hotel, which would have been incredible. Unfortunately, the expense was just too much, and they just let the building become dilapidated. At this point, there's no way to save it. And it's literally too dangerous to go in there and do things. And here's more photos. And just so you can see that indeed I was there, and I was who took these photos. I took a picture of myself in front of the Bennett School as proof that I was the one there. I also have a video of this too. So we have more, pictures there. Here's behind the space or so. One of the more fascinating pictures I took, while I was there, I was trying to get a sense of the space or whatever. It was early. It was, I didn't get the sense of any paranormal activity or so. But one of the interesting things that a friend of mine pointed out was, if you notice, and if you look closely at that particular window, she said, oh my God, look at that. There seems to be some sort of an outline of something there. So, oh, isn't that fascinating? So I zoomed into the picture and I placed that there. And it almost looks like, indeed, like there's an outline of someone there in the window. And of course, it wasn't, it just looks that way, because that happens to be, if you see the pointer, this space right here, this window here. But a friend of mine who was psychic said, oh, look, that looks like somebody there. I said, no, I found that, no, that's always there. That's just some vine or whatever that just makes it look that way. Interesting effect. Anyway, that's another place that's repeatedly haunted. If one day I can go back there, I'd love to do it, also. And we have that there for now. Okay, so at this point, we'll conclude this for now. And I have some more pictures of other sites that I have another time or so. But as you can see, there are many fascinating places you can go to visit and see. Be responsible with how you do your investigations. Be mindful and respectful of the place. And just enjoy yourself. Be open-minded. Have your equipment ready. Attune your intuition and your senses. And you never know. You might actually capture some evidence in some way. Don't be disappointed if you don't capture, anything. I've been to numerous investigations, as you saw that one right there at the Bennett School, where nothing happened. I didn't sense or see or get a feeling of anything there. The building itself has an energy, that's true, from a distance. So I can say that, well, it's indicative that there could be something there for sure. But sometimes I've been in investigations on my own, I haven't captured anything, either. I haven't got a sense of things there. Even those reputedly haunted, other people have, I have not. That happens with everyone and everything. Even with television. Once in a while, they too will admit, well, there wasn't anything, we didn't capture that much there or so. But because they're a television show or so, they have to present something. I've said this numerous times as well in the past. And they manage to do something or capture or say that it's something, or we hear this or we see this or so. And whether it's true or not, well, that's up to you to decide. But again, they have to have a show weekly, they have to have ratings, and they're being paid, for that, to produce something. And I will leave it at that. So I hope you found this educational and fascinating and interesting. I know we went way over time, but I went to 2-hour mark, but there was a lot to cover. I hope you find it interesting. For those of you who see the recording, I hope you'll find it interesting later on as well. And get out there, explore. You have an interest, just do it properly, right, and with respect. And you'll have a fascinating experience and a fascinating time no matter what happens. So I wish you all good ghost hunting. So I'll leave you on that note for this Friday evening. Be blessed, take care. I'll be back with another program next week. Topic to be announced, okay? So take good care, have a wonderful weekend. Blessings to you always, and see you on the other side. Take care, everybody. I'm just checking here, and good night.